Hi, I'm Anna, a third-year fine art student at Loughborough University. This is my degree show, and this is everything that went into creating it. My process began with film photography. I explored places, both urban and natural, whilst considering the lives of the people who frequent them. Although there are no figures in my photographs, I am interested in their presence through the things they leave behind, the footprints in the mud, the buildings they inhabit, the graffiti, etc. I then combined my photography with painting and drawing techniques, allowing me to project my internal emotional responses onto my external perceptions, creating a dialogue between what is seen and what is felt. I then split each photograph into sections on Microsoft Word before printing onto tracing paper, the translucency of which allows for purposeful and creative layering. I trimmed the edges and used a handful of small pieces of tape to attach each section together. This task was long and repetitive, but very satisfying once it all came together. Next, I spent time configuring the sections into larger scale collages, finding the best ways for them to interact. I rearranged them constantly, using both my knowledge of compositional planning as well as my intuition based on my emotional response to each photograph. My next step was to take all of my tracing paper sections out of the studio and into the light and sound room, where I had much more space to work with. By this point I had already selected my degree show space and measured its dimensions, which was helpful for planning my final composition. My work is arranged into my own personal form of mapping. It is a record of my experience walking through a space, translated into a visual language for others to interpret. The principles of psychogeography guide my thoughtful and deliberate way of exploring places, whereby I reveal their emotional impact by uncovering hidden connections and experiences. Once my composition was figured out, I started to work on the final layers of my project. I used water to create sculptural tracing paper pieces, where I scrunched the wet paper into the shape I want, creating interesting textures. Once layered over the top of the original sections, they symbolize a breeze passing through the landscape, adding atmosphere and visual interest. I reprinted existing sections for this, with the plan to choose where to add them once in my final degree show space. I also created some small tracing paper collages, consisting of one image each. These would be used to fill large gaps within the composition, adding visual intrigue due to the dramatic difference in scale. The final step was installation week, which began with removing nails and screws from my space and polyfilling any holes. I also sanded down sections, aiming to make my walls as clean as possible so as not to distract from my work. I also swept the debris from the floor and painted the walls with a fresh coat of white, which would work as a neutral backdrop. It then came time for me to once again arrange my sections onto the wall, using the compositions I had established during my trial run as reference for where to place everything. This process was long and strenuous and involved lots of climbing onto chairs and ladders. I also used a spirit level throughout to ensure I was installing everything correctly. I then experimented with where to put my sculptural layers. I tried to be purposeful and selective and not overwhelm the composition. The final step, once everything was taped up on the wall, was to nail it in securely. This process involved making a small hole with a nail, removing it, and placing small map pins inside. I spent a whole day doing this, making sure everything was safely up on the wall. The last day of install involved finishing touches before painting the floor, and with that, my degree show was complete.